Hi, I'm Dr. Alice, Associate Professor in Microbiology. In today's lecture, we'll be learning about subcutaneous mycosis. So, mycosis is broadly classified into various types, which includes superficial mycosis, subcutaneous mycosis, systemic mycosis or disseminated mycosis, and we have opportunistic mycosis. So what are these subcutaneous mycotic infections? They are chronic infections. Usually they will be localized and they involve the subcutaneous tissue. And the lesions develop due to the implantation of etiological agents in the subcutaneous tissue. And the infection sets in due to a trauma, caused by a sharp object, or you call it as the splinter injury. Say sharp wood barks might get embedded in the subcutaneous tissue, and if the etiological agent like the fungal organisms are present, they can initiate the infection. And the subcutaneous mycosis is caused by a heterogeneous group of fungi. And most of these fungi are soil saprophytes and each have got a regional epidemiology. So we have various types of the subcutaneous mycotic infections. We have mycetoma, sporotrichosis, chromoblastomycosis, pheohyphomycosis, rhinosporidiosis, and lobomycosis. Mycetoma and rhinosporidiosis is much prevalent in the southern part of India. Now let's look into the first case. Here a 55-year-old man, he came to the OPD with a painless swelling in his left foot. And the swelling occurred after injury to the sole of his left foot and it got worsened. On examination, we're able to see multiple draining sinus tracts, sulfur granules and large swollen indurated mass that was palpable on the top of his left foot. So we have three clues here. One, there is multiple draining sinus tracts, presence of sulfur granules, and there is a swollen indurated mass. So these are the three features that we come across in this particular patient. We have mycetoma, which usually will be presented with these three features, or you call it as the triad. That is the draining sinus tract, sulfur granules and large swollen indurated mass. Now let's look detail into this particular infection. So mycetoma is a chronic granulomatous infection of the skin as well as the subcutaneous tissue. Mostly the extremities gets involved and it will also involve the fascia and the bones. So the pathognomic feature of mycetoma is a triad which includes tumefaction, which is a tumor-like swelling of the affected tissue. Second, there will be multiple draining sinuses. Third, there will be presence of grains or granules in the sinuses. So this infection was commonly called as Madura foot or Madura mycosis because this infection was first described in Madurai and hence called Madura foot or Madura mycosis. John Gill was a person who first described this infection in Madurai. And now there are two types of this mycetoma. One is eumycetoma. As the name eumycetoma, it is true mycetoma. It is caused by fungi. And the second one is the actinomycetoma. It is mainly caused by higher forms of bacteria like actinomycetes and nocardia. So this actinomycetoma is very common in the southern part of India. So based on the presence of grains, so we saw the triad as the pathognomic feature of mycetoma. So one is the tumefaction, second is the presence of granules, third is the multiple discharging sinuses. So now what are these grains? These grains are nothing but the microcolonies of the infecting organism. So these grains can be white or black in the case of eumycetoma. So these are the agents which produce this white grain mycetoma, where you have this Madurella mycetomatis, Madurella griseae, Exophiella and Curvularia. And then we have this black grain mycetoma, where we have this Tuloescherichia boydii, Aspergillus, Acremonium and Fusarium. So they produce black grains. And then actinomycetoma is caused by these agents. So we have this Actinomadura madurae, which is very common, which cause this large grain mycetoma. And then we have this Actinomadura pelletri. So this usually produces white to pink grain mycetoma. And then this one, Nocardia brasiliensis, which produces a small grain mycetoma. And we have other species of Nocardia. There is Asteroids and Caviae can also cause. And then we have Streptomyces. So these are the agents which cause actinomycetoma. So now let's move into the pathogenesis. So the route of entry is accidental trauma. So it can be due to a sharp object injury. So I said this is a saprophytic organism. So usually it will be present in dead and decaying matter. Okay, so it will be present in the thorns. So when you get a thorn prick, the organism gets implanted at the site of injury. Or it can be due to a splinter injury. The wood barks, they can harbor these fungus. And when these small wood barks gets under your subcutaneous tissue, they can initiate the infection. So now, this is also an occupational disease. It's very common among farmers, okay, because they come across these kind of sharp object injury or splinter injuries. And the site of infection, usually the exposed parts of the body, the extremities are very common sites getting infected. Mainly the lower extremities commonly gets infected, and also head and neck, back and ears. These are the other sites which can be infected. So now the lesion will be painless, it will be localized, and you see multiple discharging sinuses. And there will be a tumor-like swelling, and there will be presence of grains, which are nothing but the microcolonies of the causative organism. So in the case of eumycetoma, you will be able to appreciate white or black grains, whereas in the case of actinomycetoma, it will be no pink or to red color grains can be seen. So now this is a typical mycetoma. Here you see multiple discharging sinuses, induration, and also you will be able to see the presence of these grains. So here it is a black grain mycetoma. So these are the black grains that you can take by pressing the periphery of the sinus using a sterile gauze, and it can be transported to the laboratory for further examination.